Okay, so it's Sunday afternoon. I opened up my laptop. I've got my coffee here. Maybe it's my third coffee. Okay. And I'm staring at my calendar because testing starts in 18 days, 18 school days to prepare my students for a standardized test. The key word being standardized. And let's be real, because some of them are not ready for it. I have my data pulled up and I see that I have students at different reading levels. There are some on grade level, but there are some multiple grade levels behind, but they're all taking the same test. And I still have some students on grade level, but when I put a test in front of them, they experience severe test anxiety, or students who shut down as soon as they see a long passage. In the past years, this would have meant that I spent multiple weekends at this point in time preparing how I'm going to prepare my students for standardized testing. And now there are tools we can use, such as Colleague AI, to do in 1 hour what I used to do in 8 hours. I'm going to explain the actual science behind why each strategy works, because when you understand the mechanisms, you can adapt these approaches to your own context. So go ahead and grab your laptop, your coffee, and let's build a testing season survival plan together. I'm a teacher named Hayley Spohn, and this episode is called Testing Times. Before we dive into the workflow, we need to talk about what's actually happening to students' brains during testing. Testing is a cognitive performance task under constraint. Students are required to retrieve that stored knowledge they've already learned, hold that information in their working memory, make sure they don't get distracted by anything, understand the language of the question and what's being asked on the test, select a strategy to answer said question, and sustain their attention for multiple hours often. And they're doing all of this at the same time. From a neuroscience perspective, this heavily recruits the prefrontal cortex, and that is in charge of decision making and focus. It also requires the hippocampus, which is for memory retrieval, and the anterior cingulate cortex for error detection. Here's the key to all of this, though, is that all of these systems are extremely sensitive to stress. Who would have guessed? Research by Amy Arnsten at Yale in 2009 showed that elevated stress increases cortisol, and this can impair your working memory, your cognitive flexibility, and your recall accuracy. So when you have a student, or maybe possibly yourself, when you're taking a test and you're like, I know this, but I cannot remember, I can't figure out how to show it, it's not a knowledge issue. It's an issue of performing under stress. So let's get into the history of standardized testing, just a light overview, and we'll talk about the intent versus impact. Because standardized testing, it was designed in the early 20th century, and it was for comparability at scale. The intent made sense where you wanted to measure across populations, identify patterns, and then allocate the resources you have based on the patterns. However, over time, testing has now become tied to accountability, funding, and sometimes school evaluations as well. And now we have this layered system where one test is expected to reflect everything students have learned throughout the year, if the teachers are being effective, and how the school is performing. That is a lot of weight for one single moment. And let's get into, as teachers, what we do to prepare our students for this moment, because it's a lot of stress for us too, not gonna lie. Most test prep looks like review packets and maybe like repeated practice tests or a broad reteaching of concepts. And this approach assumes that if we increase exposure, performance will improve. But the cognitive science tells us something more precise. And don't worry if that's what your test prep looked like, because before I deep dove into this research, mine looked like that too. So, retrieval practice is more important than passive review. There's a 2006 study by Roediger and Karpik in the psychological science, and it found that students learn more by trying to recall information than by rereading it. And that's called the testing effect. There's also this thing called interleaving, which improves transfer. In a 2008 study by Cornell and Bjork, it showed that mixed topics improved the brain's ability to choose the correct strategy. And this is exactly what testing and real life requires. So the issue is that if we're doing broad and ineffective test prep, we're not helping our students. But when we use this information as targeted retrieval practice, exposure to likely errors they're going to make, and practice selecting strategies, everybody's going to be a whole lot happier. It's going to be less stressful to take the test, both for you and the student. So let's kind of set up a workflow for how we can use AI to help us out. I have a situation, maybe it's yours too. I need to prep my students for testing. I need to actually keep teaching my content because the curriculum does not stop. And I can't just do 6 weeks of, this is an outdated analogy, but bubble filling practice. And it's just going to be soul crushing for everybody. We want to have fun while we're doing all of this. That's really hard. Here, so I'm going to help everybody out. I have a colleague behind me, and I'm going to show you what my workflow might look like. So I want to make materials for this week, and I want 5 things. Targeting the most common misconceptions students have, provide retrieval practice, that's research aligned, teach test-taking strategies explicitly, address the emotional component, which is often forgotten, and differentiate for students at different levels. Easy peasy, right? Okay, so in the past, this would take me 6 to 8 hours minimum, but today, in our less than an hour together, I'm going to show you how to do it with Colleague AI in just a single step. So I've got it open behind me. Let's go. We're going to go into how I'm going to prep this. Before I show you the prompt, let me explain why this matters. Research on desirability difficulties by Robert Bjork shows that learning improves when students are challenged in a way that requires effortful thinking. But not all of those challenges are valuable. And I know you're thinking like, duh, zone of proximal development. We all know that. We all went to teacher school. But here's the thing. The highest leverage challenges are the ones that target predictable errors. They're the place where students' thinking consistently breaks down, also known as common misconceptions. And then when you address that directly, you're rewiring the mental model that's causing multiple problems. We're changing how our brain is going to think about it. So I have a prompt written out ready to go. I'm going to paste it in here for the sake of time. What are the 3 most common misconceptions students have when learning blank? For each misconception, explain why students develop it, and provide a targeted question that addresses it. Let's see. Okay, real world example. Let's do solving multi-step equations. That's a hard one. And you don't have to be a math teacher for this to apply to you. Just fill in whatever standard or topic you're talking about, and then you'll be able to do this workflow as well. Okay, I'm going to press enter. And we are going to see what pops out. It's going to think for a second, and I'm going to be a critical consumer of what is popping out of the AI because it's human in, human out. I put in this prompt. I'm going to read what the AI says and then evaluate and critically consume. Do I agree? Is there anything that's missing? So, misconception number 1, performing operations only on one side. Yep, I have seen that a lot in my math classroom. The second one, incorrectly distributing or combining unlike terms because they're like, oh, letters and numbers. What? I don't know. Yep, seen that misconception before. And then the third misconception, it's telling me performing operations in the wrong order. Yep, because PEMDAS, for whatever reason, gets skipped in elementary school. People, we got to hit that harder because when they get to middle school and high school, we're in trouble. So I'm critically consumed. Yes, these are three things I often see. I agree with them. So I checked for accuracy. Is there a cognitive explanation of why students make these errors? So let's go deeper into what it says. Many students mistakenly add, subtract, multiply, or divide on just one side of the equation, forgetting that the equation represents a balanced relationship. Yes, that does explain why. It develops because students often focus on getting rid of numbers without understanding that an equation is like a balanced scale. Yep. Students may also rush through problems or rely on memorized steps, plug and chug, gotta love it, gotta hate it, without grasping the underlying concept of balance. Perfect. Okay, yes, it explains the cognitive explanation. And the targeted question says solve 2x plus 7 equals 15. Show each step and explain why you perform the same operation on both sides of the equation. What would happen if you only subtracted 7 from one side? I love this targeted question because it's taking away the cognitive load that is required, and people don't mistake that for rigor. Lowering the cognitive load is what we want. We can still be rigorous without having to think about all the things that are required to do the problem. So we're taking that away by saying, yeah, you have to do something on both sides of the equation. We're giving them that answer. But what happens if you only do it to one side? So that way they're really trying to get to the root of the misconception and the thinking that is happening behind it. So this is precision test prep. Instead of reviewing solving equations broadly, I'm targeting the exact places where students' thinking is breaking down. And this aligns with the research on error analysis and deliberate practice. And y'all, that took 2 minutes. Like, that would take me so long. Probably like multiple planning periods, a backwards planning day, and it's all done for me. Boom. Okay, so now I can go work on other stuff. The next thing we're going to think about is retrieval practice, because this is where research gets really specific about what actually works. The science of retrieval. There was a landmark 2006 study by Roediger and Karpik. You're hearing their names a lot, huh? They found that trying to recall information, aka retrieval practice, strengthens memory more than rereading. This is one of those like huge, robust findings in cognitive psychology. But there's a nuance that retrieval practice works best when it's spaced out over time, not crammed. Feeling called out there because in college, yeah, I definitely pulled a lot of all-nighters and then wondered why I did not do successfully on the exam the next day. The other part of it is that you need mixed topics, not blocked. Also, again, feeling called out because when I would make my test prep, I would make these beautiful, elaborate Google Forms that would act as escape rooms. So I'd copy and paste, screenshotting all of the practice released SBA items for each domain, like numbers and operations, whatever. I would make one escape room per domain. And at first, students loved it. They had so much fun. By the fifth domain, they're like, oh my gosh, can we do anything else besides a Google Form escape room? Colleague can also help with that. Just a little shout out there. But so we need to have mixed topics, not blocked. And they need to be not too easy, not too hard, just right. Okay, so my next thing I'm going to talk about, I have, again, my prompt copy and pasted here for the sake of time. Create a week of daily 10-minute retrieval practice warm-ups for grade level and subject. Okay, so I'm talking in this conversation about solving equations. And when I think about continuing this conversation, it's going to be on that topic. If you wanted to use this prompt frame, you would need to start a new conversation if you're using the first prompt frame on a different topic or domain. So, creating the week of daily 10-minute retrieval practices. Let's say eighth grade, and we already know the topic because I'm continuing this conversation. For each should include 5 to 7 questions, mixing recent and older content, gradually increasing in difficulty throughout the week, include an answer key. And because for the sake of time again, I'm not going to upload like a curriculum or something for recent and older content or my scope and sequence because it's just going to pull from what's typical. But bonus points when using this prompt frame, upload whatever your scope and sequence was so that it knows the recent and older content that you're referring to. So, as you can see, what subjects should these warm-ups cover? What specific contents or units should I include? Any specific learning needs to accommodate? And it's asking for specifics. I'm just going to say, do your best. You should probably answer these questions if you're using colleague AI. However, I'm just showing you a demo, so we're just going to see what pops out. Okay, we have eighth grade retrieval practice warm-ups. It says these warm-ups spiral through key eighth grade math concepts, including linear equations, system of equations, functions, transformations, exponents, and scientific notation. Okay, so I'm noticing in this chat, for some reason, it didn't keep my topic of solving multi-step equations. So in order to do that, I would need to have a two-way conversation, which I probably should have answered right there. But when I said do your best, I'm going to say, remember, we were talking about solving equations in this chat. AI is all about communication. It's going to do exactly what you ask it to do. And because I was unclear in my prompting, I got out something that I didn't want. So just like when you're communicating or collaborating with someone, you have to go back and forth and refine your thinking, refine what you're asking for so that the output is actually useful for you. So as you can see, this is still thinking. I'm going to go up for the sake of time just to look at this other one where it had those mixed strategies. So it has Monday, 10 minutes, and solve for X, where 3X plus 7 equals 22. And there's 6 different problems, sometimes 7 each day. It goes from foundation review to building complexity, mixed applications, increased rigor, and then synthesis and challenge. And the answer key is at the end. Perfect. Okay. I would spot check some of these to make sure that the answer key is correct. 99% of the time it is, but that's part of being a critical consumer and human in, human out. And also, the other thing I would do with this is once I'm implementing it, it says 10 minutes. I can think of a student that's when they're solving for X, 3X plus 7 equals 22. That's going to take them 10 minutes, point blank, period. So I might know that and then use this as like extension questions, or I could monitor and see what's the average time it takes students to do this foundation review. And then after I have that data, come back the next day and say, hey, you gave me this and said it would take 10 minutes. It actually took 20 minutes, or my students got to number 2 in 20 minutes or 10 minutes. So adjust accordingly. So, but honestly, that was a week's worth of prep in a couple minutes. Less than 5, I would say. Again, much faster than I could have done by myself. And now let's get more into some research. There was a 2006 meta-analysis by Sepeda and colleagues where they examined spacing effects. They found that spacing practice over time produces better long-term retention than massing practice. The brain needs time between exposures to consolidate the information. So when we're thinking about test prep, maybe this should be a year-long thing, right? Instead of just 2 weeks before the test, because you want to have that spaced out practice. There's also research by Cornell and Bjork on interleaving, which showed that mixing topics improves the brain ability to select the correct strategy. And that's what testing requires, and again, real life requires, because it's not going to be like, today we're doing the domain of numbers and operations. No, life's going to be like, what kind of angle is that? What do you need to do? X, Y, and Z. So students don't get a test where all the problems are like that either, right? So they need to identify the type of problem first and then solve it. So we have that week's worth of warm-ups. and I'm going to use it for the month leading up to testing and probably use it as a do now because that routine's already established in my classroom for the first 5 minutes of class. And now I'll get some really useful data for what interventions need to happen or tier two supports before testing. Okay. Um, we've talked about all this. Yeah, we should probably do this all year, but what you can really hit home before testing during this like 2 week chunk of time is testing strategies. And this has to be explicitly taught. And you have to make sure, like, this is where a think aloud or something like that would come into play because they're often taught like tips, but they're actually cognitive scaffolds that support executive functioning that's happening in the brain. Remember at the beginning how we talked about you have to do so many things at once. Retrieve the information, hold it in your working memory, not get distracted, focus on what you're doing, unpack the wording of what it's doing. So, this is going to help lower those stress levels. So, some common test taking strategies: elimination strategy, where you are like, A doesn't make sense, so it has to be B or C. That reduces cognitive load by narrowing options. Annotation supports attention and encoding. Rereading supports error detection through the anterior cingulate cortex. And then pausing before answering gives the brain time to move from impulse to reasoning. There was some research from Shamote and O'Malley in the 1990s on these learning strategies, and they found that they have to be done through explicit instruction. You have to name the strategy, model it, and give students practice time. And that's going to significantly improve performance. And like I said, keyword being explicit. You can't assume students are going to figure out these strategies on their own. So now I have another prompt ready to go, going back to my little AI helper, my Robin, and I am always Batman. I'm going to paste it. It says create a 15-minute mini lesson teaching students the test taking strategy of blank. And I'm going to say elimination. That should be a fun one. So I'm going to type in elimination. Include an explanation of why it works, a demonstration with a sample question, sentence frame for students to explain their thinking, and 3 practice questions where students apply the strategy. For those of you just listening and not watching, I've started a new chat so that everything's fresh and we're not talking about the solving of equations anymore. I click send, and we are going to practice being critical consumers. You know, you got to hear something 3 to 20 times in order to remember it. So I'm going to say it over and over, and you're going to be like, yes, Hayley, I know. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, so the answer is mini lesson overview, the elimination strategy. It says 15 minutes. Perfect. I have a block of time I can do with that. It focuses on teaching students how to improve their test taking skills through the elimination strategy. It helps students narrow down answer choices by crossing out options that are wrong, and it makes it easier to identify the correct answer. So why elimination works? The power of elimination. It's like being a detective solving a mystery by ruling out suspects. That makes things fun. We could play Clue afterwards too. Three key reasons this strategy works is that it reduces your choices and it forces you to read all the answers carefully to pick the right one. And it also builds your confidence because even if you're not 100% sure, your probability just got a whole lot better. So now we teach how to use it. Read the question carefully, then read each answer choice one at a time. Ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this definitely wrong? And cross it out. And then there's some demonstration. Wow, it even gave me a think aloud modeling, like a whole paragraph of what I should say. It has sentence frames for students to use. I can cross out blank because blank. I think the answer is blank because, and then practice questions with, yeah, students should eliminate A, C, and D because they don't match the story, leaving B as the theme that matches. Perfect. Oh my gosh. Like I said, every time I'm just amazed because that would take me so long. We can also have the colleague AI generate sample passages. We could do it with clear text features if that was a strategy you were wanting to use for close reading, and so on and so forth. So, like I said, there's multiple studies that show the teaching of test taking strategies improves performance, but only if they're taught explicitly and repeatedly. We can't just do one and done. So, students need opportunities to practice these new skills with feedback. This is a lot of work that just got done for me. Okay, let's kind of shift into the SEL part of things where we have to address test anxiety. That's huge. Um, and it's a really big layer, right, of and component of testing because students don't enter the testing environment as like, okay, I'm this neutral cognitive machine. I'm going to show everything I've learned. No, they're people. They enter like with anxiety and self-doubt and, oh, last time I took a test, I did really bad. What if that happens again? Or maybe I didn't eat breakfast this morning, or I got in a fight with my sister yesterday. Like there's all these things, right, that could be causing physiological responses. And there's research to back this up. In a 2005 study in Psychological Science by Bellick and Carr, it found that test anxiety consumes working memory resources. So you literally have less cognitive capacity when you're anxious. Your body kind of goes into fight or flight. But here's the fascinating part is that there was a 2011 study by Ramirez and Billick. It was published in Science and found that students who wrote about their worries for 10 minutes before testing performed significantly better because they're externalizing the stress to free up cognitive capacity. Now, here is where context gets important, where we are human in, human outing everything, being a critical consumer. I think about the population that I teach, and it is a lot of multilingual learners. If I told them to write out their worries in English or, just write a paragraph, it would spike their anxiety for my students. So I might shift this and have them draw a picture or make a digital collage inserting pictures on a Google slide, anything to express or like multiple methods for expressing. Shout out to UDL. So, more science behind this is that stress impacts the sympathetic nervous system. Your heart gets going faster, your breathing becomes shallow, your cortisol rises, and that is not good for anybody's performance. So, we really want to teach students to activate their parasympathetic nervous system through simple techniques like deep breathing and all those kind of things. Okay, so now I'm going to copy and paste my prompt. I have another one, so I'm making a new tab on Colleague AI, and I'm going to paste it. Create a one-page test day toolkit for students that include 3 calming strategies to use during the test, 3 test-taking reminders, and encouraging statements. Keep language simple and includes icons for each strategy. You know what? With this prompt, I could do it in the brainstorm ideas feature, but I kind of want to use the generate image feature. So I like to click 4 counts for my image, so that way I can like pick which one I like best. And I'm also going to do advanced mode because that's my preference. You can pick your ratio. If you have something you already like, you can add the reference. And now this is going to take a second to load. With this is not content material, so I could post whatever it gives me on my smartboard during testing as a reminder for students, especially if I used that image during our mini lessons for test taking strategies. It's now going to be an anchor in their brain of what to do during the test, especially if I use the same thing on the day of the test. As you can see, super cute. There's different options I can pick from. I think I would pick this one because it has the boxes around each section that I asked for, calming strategies, reminders, and statements. It has a nice visual with each of the components. So like deep breaths have a simple icon of lungs. Pacing yourself has a clock. Stay positive, a calm mind thinks clearly, and it has a shield next to it. Love that. And that was done in under a minute. Perfect. So now my kids have an anchor chart that they can refer back to for the SEL component of calming their nervous systems and making sure they're ready to actually show what they learn and not just, it get jumbled in all the stress. Okay, so now let's get back into some other test taking prep. I am now thinking about things like intervention groups I could do possibly. So, because not all students need specific test prep, right? We were talking about that at the beginning, how each student has different needs, but it's a standardized test. So, I'm going to go in and paste my next prompt. I'm teaching what standard and topic, but some students are struggling because they're missing foundational skills. What are the 2 to 3 prerequisites concepts they need? For each, provide a quick diagnostic question and a targeted mini lesson at a simpler level. We already talked to the math people, so math people, I got to give ELA people some stuff. So let's do answering text dependent questions as our topic. You're going to see me spell stuff wrong. That's normal. And the AI still knows what I mean, so it's great. Okay, it's giving me all of the answers that I am looking for. We're looking at prerequisite skills, and it's talking a lot about how decoding, especially if it's K through third grade, would be an issue, but working with sixth grade content. So some strategies would be locate the information in the text. Oh, no, these are still prerequisite skills. So locating information in the text, understanding question words and what they're asking, like who, what, where, when, why, distinguishing between text evidence and personal opinion. That's a huge one. So now it gives some diagnostic questions and a targeted mini lesson that you can do for each one. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. And I could even say, like, I love this one, write out for a 15-minute small group of 6 kids and go from there. So this is precision intervention. Instead of reviewing everything again, I'm targeting the exact gaps that are preventing students from accessing grade level content. There is more research by Wanzek and colleagues in 2012 that found that interventions are most effective when they're targeted, intensive, and sustained, not broad and scattered. So let's get down to the honest truth that you're not going to close multiple year gaps in 3 weeks. That's not how learning works. But you can identify the highest leverage skills, provide targeted support, give students strategies to access what they know, and build confidence in taking tests. It's all realistic, it's all research aligned, and it's ready for you for testing season. We got a lot done. We got do nows, we got mini lessons, we have interventions, we have test taking strategies. This would take so long, even in a PLC. It got so much faster, and we can use our brain still, human in, human out, ask for certain specific things, and use what it tells us to make our time more efficient and our planning more efficient. And that was like, okay, let's check the time. I think like 35 minutes. That's nothing, right? We can do this. Like, I love and enjoy your job again. Let's finish this out strong, and we'll show you 3 more tasks to round out the testing prep stuff. So I'm going to copy and paste my prompt, start a new chat. So I'm talking about something new, and paste it. Create 3 exit ticket options at different difficulty levels that all assess understanding of blank. Let's see. The scientific method. We hit math, we hit social, or we hit ELA, we got to hit science. Okay, and they should each take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. Perfect. Again, probably better if you put your grade level, but also this little account setting button on the left, you can put in what grade level, what subjects you teach, and any student demographic profile information. And that is how it's going to come out specifically with what you need. So I don't necessarily need to put my grade level in context because it's already saved in my account settings. Okay, beautiful. Always match the steps, put in order, multiple questions, and it has an advanced level as well where it's going to design somebody's going to design a simple experiment using the scientific method. Down at the bottom, you can see the save button. If I press this, it's going to save into My Documents. You can change the type and even organize it in folders. It's like Google Drive almost. And that way you can get it when you're ready for it, or you could print it out right now with this little button. And we just had 3 differentiated exit tickets done in less than a minute. The last thing I might leave you with is you could offer parent communication. Let me copy and paste the prompt. And again, I'm going to make sure to click a new tab. Paste, where did it go? And then it's going to say draft a brief parent letter. And I'm going to switch that. A family letter. And it says 200 words explaining upcoming standardized testing. The letter should explain what test is coming and when, manage expectations realistically, provide 2 to 3 ways that families can support at home, and be encouraging but honest using simple language that's easy to translate, avoid educational jargon. So press submit and it's going to draft the letter for me. Use your human brain though. Does it sound like you? Does it sound alienating? Put your tone and spin on it. This is just a draft for me to have a point to start because I want to use my voice and tone in my writing. And especially because we're doing a relational thing, families to school, we want to make sure it doesn't sound like a computer. Okay, pretty great with what it's saying. I would definitely take out some M dashes. That's a big one as well. Okay, we recapped a lot and in less than an hour. I'm going to go over to remind you what we've just done. Misconception analysis with targeted questions. We created a week of spiral review that was targeted for warm-ups, test taking strategy mini lessons, a student test taking anxiety toolkit, differentiated instructional material and small group lessons, 3 exit tickets that were differentiated, and a parent communication letter or family communication letter. That was not a lot of time, and we did a ton. And now I have time to invest more in my community at school and in the people that make up my community, like talking to my PLC or building relationships with students or making family phone calls home and that like the real important stuff, you know? And we went through a lot of research too. It's all backed by science. So let's kind of wrap up here. If all of your students don't pass your standardized testing this year, it is not necessarily your fault. It is a reflection of the system we are working within, and it's a lot of stress on us. But we can show up for our students and prepare using the tools that we have to do it in an effective manner and show up and do our best. Because that's all we ask of our kids, right? Anyways, is show up, do your best. But what we created in this last hour, it's giving students the best possible chance to show what they know. It's going to reduce barriers, it's providing scaffolding, and it honors where they are while still holding high expectations. And like I said, the most critical part is it's giving you your time back. You can now take the time you were using to create materials manually and spend it to build relationships. Or, revolutionary thought, take care of yourself because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I say it with me. You cannot pour from an empty cup. That is a huge thing in education. So remember, after this podcast, go open Colleague AI, try one of the tasks we've talked about if you weren't doing it along with me, just one. Pick the highest leverage task for your context and create it. You're going to review the output critically, critical consumer, human in, human out. Check for accuracy, appropriateness. Use it in your classroom this week, and then refine your prompts based on what worked and what didn't work. Build your bank of materials gradually, and you don't need to create everything all at once. Testing season is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. and you don't have to do it all manually. Use the tools available to you. Use the research that guides your decisions and trust your expertise. You've got this. Your students have got this. And together, we're going to make it through testing season. Again, my name is Hayley Spohn. Thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck to everyone out there. You got this.